Welcome to Securing Digitalization, the Siemens Cybersecurity podcast. Our hosts, Natalia, Oropeza and Mirko Ross.
Welcome to the new season of Securing Digitalization and a new episode. And it's my pleasure to introduce my co-host, the Global Chief Cybersecurity Officer at Siemens, Natalia Oropeza.
Welcome, thank you, and I am as well having the pleasure to be again with the fabulous, unique Mirko Ross. So thank you, Mirko, for being with me today again. Happy to have you. And today we both have a very special guest for today's podcast, and he is Evangelos Ouzounis, and he's the head of Policy Development and Implementation Unit at the European Agency for Cybersecurity, so-called ENISA. So welcome, it's an honor for both of us, for Mirko and for myself, to have you today here in the podcast, Evangelos.
Natalia, Mirko, thank you very much. It's my honor actually to be here today with you, and I look forward, to the discussion that we are going to have.
Very cool. We want to talk about a very, very important topic. It's about why cybersecurity needs a regulatory framework in the European Union and beyond. And to me, this sounds like a complicated challenge. So how can we get that all together? And by that, it's really a pleasure to have you here, Evangelos, because I would like to know a little bit more about what are your thoughts on cybersecurity and your work in ENISA. And by that, let me start with a little provoking question. So, is the European Union trying to harmonize cybersecurity, same like they did with bananas a couple of years ago, defining a common framework of what is the right form and size of a banana to be traded along all member states in the European Union? So, Evangelos, are you doing the same with cybersecurity now?
Now, I don't know if I'm in the business of regulating bananas or something like this, but cybersecurity is absolutely a very important subject. Our societies, our economies, our democracies are basically rely on IT, and the pace of digitalization is increasing. And we can somehow make the economy, make the democracy somehow work only if we make sure that there is some trustability, there is some security in the system. Now, of course, these are very complex ecosystems, especially in the European Union, in the single market, with the free movement of goods and services. Countries depend on each other, companies depend on each other. And the cybersecurity is a very important topic that might disrupt supplies, that might disrupt services. So you cannot leave it like this. You cannot expect that companies will suddenly regulate themselves. So for several years we hope that will be the case, but we realized, as it happens usually in Europe, there are different levels of maturity. Member states who are very good and others who are not very good. Companies who are very proactive and they are very good on cybersecurity, and others who are basically not so good. So we reached the point where the Commission realized that they should intervene by issuing some recommendations initially, and then bringing the member states together to collaborate, to share information, to understand their responsibility. And the last 3-4 years, this thing has somehow accelerated a bit, with the advent of the NIS directive and the positive experiences and the positive lessons, out of the NIS directive. So we still are in the process of improving cybersecurity in Europe. There are things still to be done. And we see a lot of proactiveness, from member states and from industry in this area. So we are far away from regulating bananas, so we haven't reached this point.
So what I've seen as well, that there are tasks where you need to look into the future. for example, how can you increase cybersecurity on artificial intelligence, and what are the standards for cybersecurity and AI? This is to me a rather futuristic topic on the one side, and but as well, it's so important that you think this with stakeholders from industry, as this technology is carried out by business faster than regulators can adopt. So, Natalia, what is the Siemens contribution and views on such regulations towards cybersecurity?
Yeah, let me tell you, when it comes to standards and regulations, things have certainly improved within the EU since the NIS directive was enacted. But it can be improved. And today we still don't have a harmonized landscape of cybersecurity regulations, standards and norms within the European Union. There are national laws, such as the German IT Security Law 2.0, and legal initiatives on the EU level, which form a mix of regulation with contradicting cybersecurity requirements. So let me explain you what is my day-to-day. I mean, we sell products and we have products all over the world. And the regulations frame, like you say, Evangelos, before, those are needed, and those have mainly the goal to protect us. Now, what I found in my day-to-day is that they need to be harmonized, and especially in Europe. Because otherwise we don't add protection, so we don't increase the protection, but we rather increase the complexity of companies like Siemens and many others. So let me be a little bit more specific. In the case of Siemens, what I have to do and what we have to do is to have, number one, our experts are investing, of course, time, and that we do with a lot of let's say, joy, and we enjoy that, participating in the different expert groups so that we can advocate and contribute and make this harmonization happen in the European Union. Number two, we also have some set of experts that we call regulations radar. So they are all the time watching of the different regulations and looking into the consequences of those regulations into our several products in the different parts of the world, because of course we cannot afford not to be compliant, so we need to be compliant. And of course the adaptations in our products, if needed, they need to be done with time. So that's something that we cannot do from one day to another, right? And in addition to that, we also have experts that are all the time looking whether these regulations and these settings, these needed compliance measures are not contradicting themselves, and if yes, then how can we solve it? So the more harmonization we have, and especially in the EU, right? As EU, we compete with others in the world, like China, like the US, and so on and so forth. So the more harmonization we gain, then stronger we are in regard to our products. So this is what I have to say, and this is one of my major concerns in my day-to-day operations.
When we look to data privacy regulation, the European GDPR has become a global blueprint for protecting privacy. Is it that we can build a blueprint as well for cybersecurity in Europe, so that regulation is not only seen as an obstacle for business? It could be a unique selling point for business. Evangelos, is it the way we can go with regulation in Europe?
Look, indeed, GDPR is a very big success for Europe, and that's why this has created a school of thought that is called regulations made in Europe, and I think the Commission and the policymakers, the Parliament, are thinking along these lines. But cybersecurity is a very particular topic. First of all, it's a very sensitive matter. Member states have ownership. It has to do with sovereignty, and the Commission is collaborating with the member states to find a common ground, a momentum. Of course, these discussions are not easy, and we all understand that in a common market there should be some collaboration, and we all have to agree on some, let's say, basic rules and some basic, let's say, standards. But I can tell you that sometimes this is not easy to make, especially at a regulatory level. So ENISA's role is basically this, to bring the member states together when it comes to policy implementation and to develop good practices. And these good practices are somehow on the best approaches of the different countries. And we offer these good practices back to the countries that are going to implement the policies, and hoping that all of them will follow, the best advice. But this is, again, non-binding, and a lot of countries actually do, but we don't have a guarantee. This is the best that we can do in terms of, consolidating this area and making sure that, there is a kind of a common approach. In addition to this, in certain areas, the Commission also made some progress, for example, with the certification approach. So ENISA has a new mandate now on European level. We can develop schemas and in certain areas, and we are already doing it in the area of cloud. And these schemas more or less set the baseline, for Europe. They are not mandatory and they are voluntary again, but still they achieve what you would like to have as industry. So I understand that you are doing business in all over Europe. You will prefer to comply to one set of rules and not to 27 different rules. This is something that bothers the Commission and the policymakers, and they would like to solve this problem. But it is not easy because the topic has to do with the national sovereignty, and what we have so far is the best approach possible, if I can use the term. And we go in this direction, and like many other things in Europe, such kind of discussions take time. And in this direction goes also the proposal for the ENISA Directive 2 that we are going to discuss, I hope, later. So don't lose hope. On the contrary, remain optimistic. Things will get better, are getting better. And I can tell you, with the advent of the ENISA Directive, of EIDAS, and other policy interventions of the Commission, the certification, for example, things are improving significantly.
I am optimistic, and I certainly appreciate this push for ENISA, to put the countries in the EU together and to harmonize and share best practices, because certainly this is very, very useful.
For example, the ENISA Directive, Natalia, it was exactly this, to develop a common level playing field, for member states. And I can tell you, with this as a leverage, many countries made improvement. They made a lot of investments. They developed their own strategies, cybersecurity strategies. They developed an internal structure, and these have paved the ways, for more awareness. And things became much better. So you don't necessarily need mandatory regulations. And very well, as a CISO in a big company, sometimes, it's not a matter of complying to regulations. Cybersecurity cannot be solved only with regulation.
Absolutely not. I am with you, but it helps a lot. Especially not only we talk about harmonization of regulations, but I also talk and think about harmonization of measures. For instance, in a factory, in an OT environment, without that harmonization, we really cannot protect ourselves. And I want to comment back on your comment on national sovereignty, which is certainly a very important aspect, but sometimes I think we in the EU, we should follow a risk-based approach. And I am very sensible because I have to face this day to day, really day by day. We all have a common enemy, and we all have a common goal, which is to be successful competing with our products, with our EU products. And based on that common goal and common enemy, we can derive from there the different risks that we have. And if we derive from the different risks that we have, then I am not sure where is this national sovereignty ranked, right? So I think we need, and I really would like to focus more on what is it that we need now from the framework perspective, from the cooperation among countries, so that we can protect ourselves from this common enemy, and what is it that we can do in order to be more competitive and faster on both things, on fighting the common enemy and being more competitive with our European products, right?
I mean, in terms of competitiveness, I can tell you that the idea of the certification, the EU level certification, goes in this direction because it will simplify, the procedures, and a lot of companies in the future in certain areas will most probably comply with the EU schema, So I expect a lot of improvements, in competitiveness. In terms of collaboration, as I said, the ENISA directive paved the way and developed the infrastructure, for this cooperation at the tactical and strategic level. And recently we developed a lot also the element of the operational cooperation. So if there is an issue, if there is a crisis and so on, things are getting better. And as I said, not all countries are of equal basis, but these regulations like the ENISA directive are, in my opinion, the right instrument given the political sensitivities and what is possible in the EU landscape.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, tell me, what do you think about the speed, and how can we increase the speed of this? I mean, you say there is hope, and I do have hope, and I do see this positive. I think we are getting better. Absolutely. I mean, the NIS is a clear improvement already. But still a long way to go, and we have to do a lot. So, and these conversations, disagreements, they take time. So what do you think about that? About the speed that we have, and about what is it that we can do, especially from my company, from my contribution as a company. What is it that we could do to speed up this agreement?
Look, there is a good pace already because the topic has reached the political level. Prime ministers are now talking about cybersecurity, so they all understand the importance of it. And difficult discussions that in the past took years, they are accelerating. Just to give you an example, I mean, in the past, the negotiations about the ENISA directive lasted around 3 years, So now we are in ENISA directive 2. I hope that will be much faster. And indeed, ENISA as an institution, is one of a kind in the world. I mean, we are at the disposal of member states and help them, with all these things. But it is the responsibility of the private sector as well to recognize, the importance of the topic, and it's to sell cybersecurity as a competitive advantage, as a way of attracting customers. And this is something that in combination with, for example, with GDPR and the privacy preserving policies of the Union, that can be another important, flag that Europe can, and the European industry, with Siemens being one of its important representatives, actually to demonstrate to the world that please buy European products. They are preserving privacy, they are preserving security.
Let me step in here with two important things. First of all, we have at least 27 European member states negotiating on a common understanding. But additionally, we have the US and China and Russian perspective, who needs to come in as well into a common framework from a global perspective. So cybersecurity is a global challenge, and Siemens is a global player. So Natalia, you need to handle all of this different cybersecurity regulations where you do business. So my understanding, if you have a common understanding of 27 European member states, it's easier to discuss with the other big players in cybersecurity regulations about what are the standards, where should we go. Correct me if this is wrong. And second, the industry needs to take responsibility. Industry companies showing responsibility towards cybersecurity should have a competitive advantage on the market. And Natalia, we see with the Charter of Trust that Siemens and other players are doing that already. Because with the Charter of Trust, you are implementing cybersecurity principles together with other industrial partners and organizations to bring in your own cybersecurity principles and standards in your own ecosystem, and as well, even you're pushing your suppliers. So for cybersecurity, you're extending your own standards as well in your own Siemens ecosystem. And I had an interview with Stefan Saatmann from Siemens Governmental Affairs, and he was telling me about the Charter of Trust and why it is so important for cybersecurity and the Siemens partner ecosystem.
The Charter of Trust is a cross-industry initiative, and with the associated partner forum reaches also perspectives from non-profit organizations, from governmental authorities and regulators. And this result-driven approach really offers something tangible and makes also an offer for the regulators. So let me take the example of Principle 2, responsibilities throughout the digital supply chain. Here we do have, with the baseline requirements, with the risk-based approach and with the verification methods, we do offer, let's say, a regulatory approach, which is based on industry expertise and based on best practices. And therefore, we would like to see this engaged in the discussion.
Evangelos, you had spoken about the ENISA. It's the European Union Network and Information Security Directive. Now, an update of this ENISA is in progress and going on. Can you tell us a little bit more about what is the perspective of this and the timeline?
Yes. So, as we discussed previously, the ENISA directive came in force 3-4 years ago, and it was, in my opinion, a milestone for European cybersecurity regulation, one of the first in the world, I think. And we learned a lot, and things have been improved in certain sectors. But we also realized that there are some issues still to address, to improve. At the same time, technology has evolved as well, and it was a moment where the European Commission said that we are going to evaluate, the impact of the ENISA directive and come up with any new steps. And this is actually the idea of the ENISA directive too. Is not a revolution. It is actually an incremental change. It is based on ENISA Directive 1, and it brings some improvements. So, for example, it adds a few new sectors. It deals with the matter of the digital service providers and cloud, which is an important infrastructure nowadays. There were some issues about incident reporting, for example, the thresholds and what kind of incidents were reported. So this is changing a little bit, and there are more emphasis also on other elements, like, for example, country peer reviews. This is part of a big cybersecurity package, and there are many more elements, related to cybersecurity, I have to say. Like, for example, the important and very impressive work of the European Union on 5G. This was also an important element. And the ENISA directive actually is a proposal at the moment. It was published mid of December last year, and the Portuguese presidency is now pursuing negotiations with the member states and the Commission. And I know that the negotiations are progressing well, and I hope that this time we will not need too much time to finish this. But as you know very well, the devil is always in the details.
So, Natalia, now we know that the NIS directive will be refurbished and improved. So, this is in Europe. As we discussed before, Siemens is doing business all over the world. So, how can you manage as a company to have an overview on all these different regulation initiatives going on? And how you can take care that your voice is heard as well when regulators are discussing?
Well, two measures for that. One is we do have experts that are continuously contributing in the different forums that we have internationally. for issuing new regulations and the consultations that some of the regulators do. We are always participating. We have some activities as well in Charter of Trust, and we are really contributing all over the place. In China, in the US, in Europe, in Germany, you name it. This is one way that we have. The other is of course we put a lot of effort in making sure we are compliant and we are secure and our products are secure. So we are constantly evaluating, identifying, and making sure that we are compliant, and that's okay. I mean, I do it gladly, because of course that will secure the digital world, and if we don't secure the digital world, then we will not have trust in that digital world, and we don't want this to happen in general. So this is what we have to do, and we do it now. Obviously, we pay a lot of attention of regulations that are in fact protecting us, and not the ones that are adding administrative work on us. So this is what we advocate for, right? And what I wanted to say, you and Philae, this is a question back to you, Evangelos. While I was thinking about answering your question, Mirko, about everything what we do is, I reflect on the SMEs, or the small and medium enterprise, and I want to have your opinion on, and what is your thinking about them? Because of course I told you it's a complexity, and we have to pay attention. We have to invest in the expertise, in the experts, in the workforce that is behind all of this. But what happened with them? And of course, I also want to ask, what is it that you think big companies can do to help them? Because at the end of the day, we are in this all together, and we all have to support this digital world. What's your opinion on that one?
Yes, true. I mean, the SMEs are very vulnerable. They don't have the means, the resources to invest on ICT and especially cybersecurity. They don't have also the awareness, also the governance internally, and they cannot afford to have a CSR team. They cannot afford to have a complicated, mechanism for dealing with compliance and so on. So we are aware of this, and we try to help them as much as possible by developing good practices, either high-tech SMEs. For example, we have done this, Mirko knows very well, for IoT, and we gave a lot of good practices how to develop secure IoT products, for example, or other SMEs who are users of technology. We come up with some awareness raising material and explain them, what they can do. Technology helps as well a bit, because a few of them are going to the cloud, and the cloud offers them a more secure environment, but still the problem remains. And I think it is the responsibility of the big companies to drive, to be the role model, and I know that around big companies there are usually big clusters, ecosystems, of SMEs working with you. So this is your opportunity to influence. So if you are the senior, let's say, and the SMEs are, the juniors in your network, in the way that you behave, in the contractual relationships that you have with these people, in the procurement, requirements that you put with these small SMEs, you can educate them, and you can share with them the knowledge and the expertise that you have developed, so that they don't need to invest. This is something that you can do also from your side. And of course, we as a public body, paid by taxpayers' money, we have also a big obligation to help them, and we do our best. For sure, but it's a huge sector for Europe. We talk about hundreds of thousands of SMEs, even millions, and it is very difficult, for a small agency like ENISA to reach out to all of them. So if we put our energy together, our resources together, we might improve the situation. I'm not so sure that we are going to solve it, but definitely we're going to improve it.
But look, I'm the startup here in the podcast.
Yeah. So tell us, what is it that you need from all of us? ENISA and one big company.
Well, my startup is a cybersecurity company, and we have to fulfill, of course, cybersecurity standards. So if we go with industrial players, for example, we have to fulfill the ISO 27001 cybersecurity standard. And this is really, to be honest, a complicated framework for a small and medium enterprise or a startup. It's not easy to understand. It's so complicated that even we needed to hire external advisors who helped us to fulfill the standards and all the requirements to understand it and so on. So from an SME perspective, I would love to see more easy practical standards and recommendations. I think some standards have been built for large enterprises and less for SMEs. So yes, we need more easier to implement standards for SMEs. And yes, that's my message to you and Evangelos, to support us here. Don't forget the SMEs. And from the other side, we see, of course, that the big industrial players are forcing us as a SME or standard to fulfill the standards, because otherwise we're not getting a contract, which is okay, because if not, if you don't implement cybersecurity procedures, it's bad, so it's okay. And for example, that's what I like on the Charter of Trust, because it's forcing the industrial suppliers to take care about cybersecurity.
Yes, there is a notion, that security is something that you can fix later. And a lot of startups, might have this. That let's capture the market, let's gain some momentum, and then later, we can go back in the products, and fix them, patch them. And I can already tell you that this doesn't work. It costs much more money, to patch later. So my recommendation to the smart, you asked for a very simple advice, my advice to you is, security by design and security by default already improves a lot, some of the issues.
Yeah.
I am with you. That's why we work very hard in security by design and security by default.
And I know, Natalia, that you're super engaged on security by design.
Absolutely. Yeah. We incorporate security from the beginning of the development of our products, and then we follow on the operation, and then on the maintenance of the product. So I am really convinced that to include security from the beginning, from the development phases, is going to cost cents and could prevent you from spending millions later on, whether you spend those millions in the fixes that you need or you spend those millions in facing WannaCry or ransomware attack,
Natalia, this is a new generation of executives like yourself, who are entering into this field. Until very recently, 5-6 years ago, the boards of big companies, they were considering cybersecurity maybe not a good return on investment, but now they realize, because of all these attacks, WannaCry and so on, how expensive it could be. So I think we have grabbed the attention of politicians and of CEOs, and we are on a good track, I think.
Yes, that's right. It looks much better than before. Absolutely right.
To me, this was almost the perfect final statement for this podcast. We have talked on a complex topic and a huge challenge, because this is all to be thought on a global level. And I understand that we need regulations, because otherwise the things will not improve, because we need a common global commitment in cybersecurity. So by that, this was a really good discussion. And we had a lot of information we will link in the show notes, so have a look there. Thanks for joining, Evangelos and Natalia.
Yeah, Evangelos, thanks a lot. It was really nice speaking with you and discussing with you these matters. And thank you again, Mirko. It's always a pleasure being together with you. Thank you.
Mirko, Natalia, also from my side, thank you very much. It's a great pleasure, and I'm very happy to participate in a call like this with a representative from a company like Siemens, a huge engineering powerhouse, in Europe. And I'm very glad to see that you take cybersecurity very seriously, and you are doing your best, to educate people, and that such a podcast actually is in the right direction. Thank you very much.
Securing Digitalization, the Siemens Cybersecurity Podcast.